Fallout hitting a fever pitch this morning. Republicans now demanding to know the person's identity as Democrats ramp up calls for impeachment. And President Trump calling it all a Democratic scam. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith.
And I'm John Scott in for Bill Hemmer. The news and reaction coming in fast this morning. Here's the latest at this hour. Moments ago, the president calling on Chairman Adam Schiff to resign immediately. Next, Speaker Pelosi is claiming there is a, quote, cover-up at the White House. And there are a growing number of reports saying the whistleblower did not have direct knowledge of the phone call at the center of it all.
The New York Post on its cover this morning, the masked singer. Who is the deep state whistleblower targeting Trump?
One thing is clear right now. The latest political standoff is officially underway at the Capitol.
It's another witch hunt. Here we go again. It's Adam Schiff and his crew making up stories.
It's hard to imagine a more serious set of allegations than those contained in the complaint.
It was really miserable for us to sit there and watch the other side actually fabricate statements.
And I'm here at an impeachment rally, and we are ready to impeach them!
You can judge for yourself if that was something that amounts to a quid pro quo. I don't even think it's close. It was a nothing burger for me.
Donald Trump is going to choke on this supposed nothing burger.
I don't care if you reach 217 people here in the House. I think that doesn't matter at all. What you have to reach is a threshold of the American people.
Reaction still pouring in on Capitol Hill. We have live Fox Team coverage. Newt Gingrich standing by with analysis. Peter Doocy has reaction from 2020 Democrats, but we begin with Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge. Catherine, where do things stand at this moment?
Well, Sandra, good morning. A closer review of this 9-page whistleblower complaint reveals a number of issues that are not standard. The complaint is unusual because it relies almost exclusively on secondhand information as well as media reports to connect the dots and allege presidential misconduct. It also reveals clues about the whistleblower and suggests an intelligence analyst assigned to a Russia-Ukraine portfolio. It reads, quote, the information provided herein was relayed to me in the course of official interagency business. It is routine for U.S. officials with responsibility for a particular regional or functional portfolio to share such information with one another in order to inform policymaking and analysis. On the allegation of a cover-up in the moving of the transcript of the phone call between the president and the Ukrainian leader to a secret system, 2 former and 1 current intelligence official told Fox, based on the language in the complaint, the whistleblower appeared to have minimal understanding of these systems and the handling of presidential communications, which are among the most restricted. The acting director of national intelligence, Joseph McGuire, told Congress yesterday he believed the whistleblower acted in good faith, but he said that did not equate to proof of presidential misconduct.
How the White House, the office of the executive office of the president, and the National Security Council conduct their business is their business. There is an allegation of a cover-up. I'm sure an investigation and before this committee might lend credence or just prove that. But right now, all we have is an allegation for secondhand information from a whistleblower. I have no knowledge on whether or not that is true and accurate statement.
The intelligence community watchdog, the Inspector General, said there is, quote, some indication of an arguable political bias on behalf of the whistleblower, but none of that evidence is public. And, of course, that goes to the heart of the whistleblower's motivation, Sandra.
All right, Catherine Herridge, thank you.
You're welcome.
Meanwhile, there's new information pouring in from 2020 Democrats out of the campaign trail as well.
Who facilitated Rudy Giuliani, the personal lawyer of the president, to conduct himself as though he is an emissary for the United States. The New York Bar Association needs to investigate Giuliani and probably disbar him.
I think it is fully appropriate that Nancy Pelosi has engaged in an impeachment inquiry. Every American deserves to know the truth of what happened.
If you literally are calling foreign leaders and asking them for political help in return for releasing aid that Congress had already authorized, I mean, at some point you have to impeach.
All right, so there you go. Peter Doocy live from Manchester, New Hampshire, where Andrew Yang will hold a rally this afternoon. What are the candidates saying today, Peter?
John, we've been noticing the last few days that at some fundraisers, Joe Biden doesn't say anything about Ukraine, but then at others, like last night, he says things like this, quote, "It's never been about me. It's a tactic that's used by this president to try to hijack an election so we do not focus on the issues that matter in our lives, in your lives." Biden said that out in California, where one of the senators, who was also Biden's primary competition, Kamala Harris, is name-dropping Biden in a new letter to the State Department's Inspector General, demanding an investigation to find out whether or not anybody in Foggy Bottom coordinated Ukraine meetings with Rudy Giuliani, who she believes should be disbarred. Harris writes this: "The August 12, 2019 complaint by an intelligence community whistleblower details the multiple efforts by President Trump and Mr. Giuliani to pressure Ukrainian officials to investigate baseless claims about former Vice President Joe Biden and the 2016 hack of the Democratic National Committee. None of Biden's primary rivals are joining President Trump and calling for investigations about alleged Biden family abuses of power, but that doesn't mean all of Biden's rivals believe it was right for somebody with the last name Biden to hold a lucrative Ukrainian energy job while their dad was VP."
It certainly has a bad look to it if a direct family member of a sitting president or vice president is on the board of a for-profit company. In my mind, they can wait until the term is over before serving that term, and that's certainly the way it would be under my administration.
Joe Biden still has not gone into any kind of detail about what exactly he knew about his son's business overseas, except to say that nobody in his family ever did anything wrong. John.
Peter Ducey. Peter, thank you.
Let's bring in Newt Gingrich now, a former Speaker of the House and a Fox News contributor. He's also got a new Fox Nation special coming up inside the contract with America. So make sure to pay attention to that. Speaker, thank you for joining us this morning. What a moment, what a week this has been. And having the ability to offer such unique perspective, having been at the center of the Bill Clinton impeachment proceedings, how would you describe the moment?
Insane. I listen to these guys, and you can't imagine how many factual errors and how many absurd arguments they make. I mean, it'd be as though one of them jumped up and said, if Donald Trump had decided to sell off the state of Florida, that would clearly be impeachable. And since we believe he's capable of selling the state of Florida, we should impeach him now, just in case he ever wants to sell the state of Florida. That's where they're at right now. If you listen to the quotes you just had, they were saying things that are just plain false. You look at the transcript, at no point did Trump suggest any kind of quid pro quo. It's not in the transcript. You look at the whistleblowers, so-called, who I think is clearly a bunch of baloney. I mean, what does it tell you that people were leaking information about a presidential call to another president, and this person over here picks up rumors, gossip, innuendo, shapes it into a complaint. The complaint is then taken as fact, even though this person wasn't on the call, didn't have any direct personal knowledge, and has written this thing out of whole cloth. Then Adam Schiff gets up and opens up a committee hearing with a totally false recitation of what Trump would have said if Trump were Adam Schiff's version of Trump. But what he said was just plain a lie. I mean, this stuff goes on and it compounds. And finally, I'm not sure the national media even now has shown the video of Joe Biden. This is not some mythical story by a whistleblower. Joe Biden goes to the Council on Foreign Relations and on tape says, yes, I threatened them with the loss of $1 billion in aid unless they fired this prosecutor. And I said to them, I am not coming back, and you got a half hour, you got 6 hours to solve this. And he then goes on to say, son of a blank, they did it. Now, this is Biden boasting that he had directly threatened the country of Ukraine. Here are all these Democrats who are worried about Trump who didn't threaten Ukraine, none of whom are willing to raise the question, what was Biden doing, since we have him in his own words on tape? I mean, this is not some innuendo. This is a fact. And so I watch this whole thing, and I come back to a basic formula. They hate Trump. They hate Trump every day. They wake up hating Trump. They know he did something terrible. They hoped it was Russia. Mueller was a huge disappointment.
So
now they have a new brief moment
then,
of excitement.
Mr. Speaker, that this ultimately will benefit Donald Trump. Look at the fundraising numbers we've seen since Nancy Pelosi announced the launch of formal impeachment proceedings.
I think it benefits Trump in two big ways. One, I think this will destroy Biden's candidacy. When you look at Hunter Biden in China, and you look at Hunter Biden in Ukraine, and you look at Joe Biden on tape saying as the sitting vice president of the United States, he directly threatened the Ukrainians with $1 billion penalty if they didn't drop this prosecutor. I think Biden basically is gone and doesn't know it yet. So that is an advantage.
So unwanted attention.
Second, I think it helps.
Go ahead.
Right. Well, and the second part, I think, is it totally discredits Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. I mean, she rushed out to say we have to consider impeachment when she had not yet read the transcript of the conversation. She had not yet found out anything about the whistleblower. And basically what you learned was the heat from her left was so great, she had no choice. And this is purely political. That devalues the entire Democratic House, and I think begins to put the House in trouble for the Democrats next year.
Nancy Pelosi appeared on another network this morning. Here's fresh reaction from the current Speaker of the House.
You and I differed on the Clinton because that was about personal behavior. This is about the national security of our country. And the President of the United States being disloyal to his oath of office.
It was really interesting there and obvious to ask you about that, pointing out what she sees as obvious differences when looking at the impeachment proceedings for then President Bill Clinton and now Donald Trump facing impeachment proceedings.
If you look at all the effort made over the last year about men who prey upon women, and you go back and you look at the Clinton case, we had a report from an independent counsel that said he was guilty on 7 different counts. He ultimately lost his license to practice law. He had to pay a large sum to the woman that he had predatory behavior toward, who was, by the way, his employee in the state government. You go through that whole thing, and Nancy Pelosi certainly wouldn't suggest that predatory sexual behavior and committing a felony, which he did when he committed perjury. Nancy has a problem, excuse me, because in addition, there's no proof that Trump did anything wrong. And let me say this about Giuliani. Every modern president has had private representatives who they send places to do things. The idea that if you're not a federal official government employee, you can't be used by the president is absurd. And I think you'd find literally every president at times has said to somebody, if you're going to be over there, will you go see this person or go do that
We'll
thing?
see what happens with
I
Rudy
think this whole
Giuliani,
effort by
Bill
the Democrats
Barr, whether or not there will be investigations there. You heard Kamala Harris talking about Rudy Giuliani, what will happen with Bill Barr. Will they call him in to testify? Newt Gingrich, great to have you this morning. Really appreciate your time. See you again
Thank
soon.
you.
We have a very big program for you this morning. Republican Congressman Brad Wenstrup sits on the Intelligence Committee, joins us later this hour. Texas Senator Ted Cruz is our headliner today. And in the 11 a.m. Eastern hour, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell and senior Trump campaign advisor Lara Trump. And breaking news now in the vaping crisis sweeping the nation. 13 people are now dead, more than 800 other open cases. Dr. Mark Siegel will join us with the latest.
Who are these sanctuary cities really protecting? The answer, sadly and often tragically, are criminal aliens. What these pro-sanctuary advocates do not acknowledge is that when these released criminal aliens commit further crimes, their first target is often the very immigrant communities that sanctuary advocates claim to be protecting.
That's acting ICE Director Matt Albence slamming sanctuary cities at the White House yesterday. ICE saying public safety would be improved if local law enforcement would comply with federal authorities. Joining us now, former acting ICE Director Ron Vitello. Ron, do you echo those thoughts?
Of course, he's right. It's common sense. Nobody is safer when a city protects somebody who is a criminal. Right? These people came into the country, they're here illegally, then they go on to commit another crime. This just happened in the last 2 months in Montgomery County, right after the county executive announced that they were going to be a sanctuary. They had 9 people accused of sexual assault and rape crimes that were also in the country illegally. Protecting criminals is lawlessness.
I want to put up a map of some of the notable sanctuary cities that exist in this country. You find them primarily on the West Coast and the Northeast, but also scattered throughout the middle of the country there. What do you say to the people who live in those cities about the fact that their local law enforcement officers, whether they want to or not, they're prohibited by law from cooperating with the feds?
I say to those people, they're at risk. Those officers, those jurisdictions, the mayors, the county executives, they took an oath to the Constitution. Allowing criminals to go free when they're in the country illegally and ISIS filed a detainer on them, that's lawlessness. It's a danger that puts those communities at risk.
Okay, but the leadership of cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, they say that if you allow local authorities to cooperate with ICE, you're not going to get good information from citizens of the migrant communities who might have criminal information, but they don't want to come forward with it. How do you answer that?
I've been around this community. I've worked on the border as a Border Patrol agent. People want the law enforced. When they're a victim of these crimes, right? What Matt said, these offenses occur in the immigrant community. They're more than happy to cooperate with the police to get criminals off the street.
We have some statistics that came out of that news conference yesterday. 1,300 arrests this week through immigration and customs enforcement, and 200 people who could have been arrested if their detainer had been honored. In other words, it would have been a whole lot easier to make some of these pickups if local authorities were cooperating, right?
That's correct. It's much safer for the ICE officers to take those people into custody in the jail setting. So when they're done with their state and local crimes, when they serve their sentence, it's a quick phone call off of the detainer to an ICE officer who can come into the jail and safely take that person into custody and get them removed. Otherwise, they have to go out and do these at-large arrests and targeting, and that's not good for them. It's not as safe as it could be if they did it in the jail. It's also a threat to and a risk to the communities, right? They're out chasing criminals. It's much better done in the jail setting.
And these are not minor crimes we're talking about. People, these are people who are accused of sexual assaults, of manslaughter, DUI, on and on. These are some pretty bad people.
Correct. And these are preventable crimes, right? These people are here illegally. They get arrested for another crime, and if they get turned over, if they get let go again, then they're going to commit other offenses inside of those communities. This is preventable crime, right? This puts communities at risk. All they have to do is cooperate with ICE. It's a simple phone call.
What kind of leverage, and we have just a few seconds left, but what kind of leverage does the federal government have to try to entice or create some cooperation here?
There's several programs that ICE has that jurisdictions can cooperate with, but the Congress needs to engage in this. They got to use their power in the legislature to enforce these detainers and stop letting these cities commit lawlessness. Right? They're flouting federal law.
Ron Vitello, the former ICE acting director. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Iran's president calling out the Trump administration at the UN, saying it is time to open the door to new talks. So how does the president respond?
Plus, Democratic donor Ed Buck ordered to remain behind bars. What the families of his alleged victims are saying. Next.
With a growing outbreak of lung illnesses linked to vaping, we are learning now that at least 13 people have died as the CDC investigates more than 800 cases nationwide. Health officials telling people to stop vaping now. Fox News medical correspondent Dr. Mark Siegel is joining us now. Dr. Siegel, we've been talking about this for quite some time. Are the dangers increasing? Are we learning more about the causes of these illnesses and deaths?
Both occurring at the same time. Some of this has been in the works, and CDC is catching up with cases that have been there, but also more and more cases are occurring. 46 states, 14 deaths have occurred. 4 states have actually banned flavored e-cigarettes right now. Michigan, New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Other bans are in place. President Trump is saying that he's considering banning flavors
flavored e-cigs while this is all figured out. The problem, Sandra, is we don't know what's in these things. We've never really known exactly what's in e-cigarettes, but I'll tell you what the headline here really is. Most of the injuries and the deaths are occurring because of oil, because of vaped oil. Now, where do you vape oil? That's THC, CBD, marijuana-type products, illicit, not regulated at all. They have propylene glycol in them. They have vitamin E in them. They have substances that are used to cut the oil, emulsifiers they're called, that are causing most of the acute lung injury. Now, Juul and other e-cigarettes that are on the market in your convenience store are water-based, but they have flavors that have toxins in them, some compound called diacetyl, other compounds. The more flavored it is, popcorn flavor,
what does this
cotton candy.
What does this mean for the future of vaping and learning about the dangers of it when you can study what's sold on the shelves, but you can't so much study what people are putting into these devices because some people are making home solutions, to your point?
Sandra, that's a great point. I think what's happening is somebody gets one of these devices, they take out what was in it, and they put in something that's a homebrew or illicit, something they got online. I found something online on a do-it-yourselfer that I showed you, how you can make cannabis oil and put it into one of these devices. It's all, the information's all over, everywhere. And you can't, the FDA can't police illicit manufacturers or suppliers, but of course the Drug Enforcement Agency can. So more and more regulation and authorities have to be getting involved here. FDA was never really given a roadmap here. They were never told what's in these things, and that's where we have to start. But I want to emphasize again, most of the lung damage is due to illicit.
Perhaps getting buried in the news this week was the fact that the CEO of the largest maker of these e-cigarettes has now stepped down. The CEO of Juul has stepped down, and he was known for an interview recently saying, "I'm not telling anybody to go out there and start vaping." It was always, to him, a suggestion to adults who smoke to transfer over to this as a better option. He has now stepped down in the middle of all of this.
And, you know, I told you here on this show, I used the word disingenuous. I was bold on this because I feel that a flavor like creme brulee or cotton candy or mango is really targeted to a teen, because I don't think a 70-year-old confirmed smoker that I'm treating in my office is using mango. Most of them, I'm using tobacco-flavored e-cigarettes that look like a cigarette. And I say, try that when you're trying to quit.
We had a user of these on our program just to get a personal story, and she said that she's a teenager and that's what got her started on them. So
they go for the flavors.
A lot of different stories out there. The fact that the CEO of the largest maker of these e-cigarettes has now stepped down. The CEO of Juul has stepped down, and he was known for an interview recently saying, "I'm not telling anybody to go out there and start vaping." It was always, to him, a suggestion to adults who smoke to transfer over to this as a better option. He has now stepped down in the middle of all of this.
And, you know, I told you here on this show, I used the word disingenuous. I was bold on this because I feel that a flavor like creme brulee or cotton candy or mango is really targeted to a teen, because I don't think a 70-year-old confirmed smoker that I'm treating in my office is using mango. Most of them, I'm using tobacco-flavored e-cigarettes that look like a cigarette. And I say, try that when you're trying to quit.
We had a user of these on our program just to get a personal story, and she said that she's a teenager and that's what got her started on them. So
they go for the flavors.
A lot of different stories out there. Dr. Siegel, we'll keep following it. Thank you.
Great to see you, Sandra.
All right, John?
This is no cause for any joy. This is a very sad time for our country. The impeachment of a president is as serious as our congressional responsibilities can be, and we always have to put country before party.
That's House Speaker Nancy Pelosi stepping up her impeachment push, accusing the Trump administration of a cover-up at the highest levels. Republican Congressman Brad Wenstrup was in that hearing and joins us next.
All right, and Senator Elizabeth Warren, and presidential candidate, firing back at reports that Wall Street Democrats would back President Trump over her. Money Man Charles Payne has something to say about that. He will join us live next hour.
And Super Bowl 54 has its halftime act. J-Lo and Shakira.
Can't wait.
Two superstars set to share the stage for the first time ever.
You would concur, would you not, Director, that this complaint alleging serious wrongdoing by the President was credible?
It's not for me to judge, sir.
It's actually your business to protect America's secrets, is that right?
It's all of ours, this committee as well.
The president is working improperly with a foreign government. That could compromise America's secrets, is that right?
Congressman, there is an allegation.
You would agree that should be investigated, would you not?
Chairman, the horse has left the barn. You have all of the information.
Well, Democrats on the House Intel Committee clashing with acting DNI Joseph McGuire yesterday at that feisty hearing. Democrats ramping up their impeachment push, meanwhile. And joining us is the member of the House Intelligence Committee, Republican Congressman from Ohio, Brad Winstrup. Saw you in that room yesterday, Congressman. What a moment that was for the country to look on at what was happening in that room. What were you thinking, particularly in that moment with the chairman of the committee was pressing the acting,
who had a career, a stellar career of honor and integrity, who was trying to do the right thing and adhere to law, and I think he held up very well.
And again, the president just moments ago saying that he believes that Adam Schiff was lying before Congress and that he should resign. He said it before and he just said it again in a tweet a few moments ago. Where you saw was Democrats particularly taking issue with process, over and over grilling the acting DNI on the process by which he handled that complaint, taking it to the White House first rather than Congress. Did you have any issues with how the acting DNI handled that whistleblower complaint, Congressman?
I don't at this point, but I was waiting for him to come and talk to us, and I'm glad that he did. And I'm glad it was in an open hearing for all of America to see, because he explained the step-by-step process, why the decisions were made. You know, we got to see some of this the day before on the Intelligence Committee, so I'm really kind of surprised that they went that route, because it was very well explained, and it was legal and binding what the Office of the Congressional Legislation should tell us. And when you think about it, we now have the Speaker of the House saying she wants to impeach, and I say, for what? And she says, for a cover-up. A cover-up of what? You've had the Office of Legal Counsel come and tell us what their feeling was. We also have the complaint, and we also have the conversation between the presidents. What more do you want? This is transparent. That is hardly a cover-up.
Congressman, meanwhile, Senator Lindsey Graham, as far as what is next and how things proceed from here, he has tweeted this out. It is imperative we find out which White House official talked to the whistleblower and why. Why didn't they lodge the complaint? The senator asks. So I'll ask you, Congressman, what do you want to see happen next and the complaint?
Well, if you really want to get to the truth, I guess we have to find out who the whistleblower talked to, and I would like to know who helped the whistleblower put together the complaint, because it surely seemed to have been written by someone of high professional abilities. It seemed like a legal document rather than just somebody saying, hey, I have a complaint. There were footnotes and everything else. I mean, so we got a lot of questions to ask. Who was involved with this and why, and was there a bias coming from this? But as I said, I think it's been transparent. Everything is out on the table, and yet we're going to continue on, and that Speaker Pelosi wants to have an inquiry of impeachment, which, by the way, has to be voted on the floor.
Right. And we do know that Rudy Giuliani is mentioned in that phone call with the president of Ukraine. We heard it come up. It took about 2 hours into that hearing yesterday to hear his name brought up in the hearing room. Kamala Harris, in reaction to yesterday, saying that he needs to be investigated, possibly disbarred for his relationship with Ukraine. And Nancy Pelosi seems to be bringing attention to Bill Barr. In an interview this morning, she said he has gone rogue. Is there any update on where Democrats plan to now go with Rudy Giuliani and William Barr as far as investigations or possible hearings?
Well, my guess is, because we've seen this playbook before, we've seen this movie, they are going to try and discredit virtually anybody who was associated with the President of the United States in one way, shape, or another. And really the people that should be discredited are the ones that gave a false account of what the conversation was. We could go on and on and on. You know, what we are seeing is people accusing others of what they themselves have been doing for the last 3 years. And it would have a lot more credibility if our chairman would even take a look at some of the things that were done within the FBI and DOJ and other areas. And I will say this too. If President Trump did what Joe Biden bragged about doing, then I think he would have a problem. But I don't see that from that conversation.
So how are Republicans going to proceed with that then, based on what you were saying?
Well, I think that we're going to have to try and go through all the legal processes we can to, again, investigate and see what actually took place. Because that, to me, is a very serious potential offense that needs to be addressed. And it's amazing how that's not even discussed by the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. When it comes to these things, you know, in my opinion, this is a time where you put your politics aside and you lead on behalf of the American people. You don't lead on behalf of your politics and your political party.
All right, we are out of time. I appreciate you coming on America's Newsroom this morning. Congressman Brad Wenstrup, thank you.
Thank you.
Families of some of the victims relieved yesterday after Democratic mega donor Ed Buck was ordered to remain behind bars pending his trial. Buck was arrested on drug distribution charges after 2 fatal overdoses in his home. Jonathan Hunt is live in Los Angeles with details for us. Jonathan.
John, it took less than 10 minutes for the judge to decide that Ed Buck should be held in custody until his trial on federal drug charges gets underway. Those charges followed his arrest earlier this month at his home in West Hollywood in the wake of the meth overdose of a 37-year-old man there. Prior to that overdose, which the victim survived, 2 men had died from similar meth overdoses inside Buck's apartment. Buck was charged. One of those men, Jamel Moore, died in 2017, having written in a journal about his drug addiction. The final entry saying, quote, "If it didn't hurt so bad, I'd kill myself, but I'll let Ed Buck do it for now."
We can all feel happy today that Ed Buck is not torturing or killing another black gay man.
Ed Buck is a long-time political activist and donor to Democrats and has given around $116,000 to Democratic candidates and groups over the last 11 years. That's according to the Federal Election Commission figures, including small donations to the presidential campaigns of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and John Kerry. Prosecutors told the judge yesterday that the pattern of drug overdoses inside Buck's home made him a, quote, significant risk to public safety. The judge apparently agreed. And so Buck will remain behind bars until his trial begins. He faces, by the way, a potential 20-year sentence. John?
Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
Brand new reaction, meanwhile, coming in from President Trump after Iran called on the U.S. to drop sanctions crippling that country's economy. General Jack Keane will join us on that next.